see if it was just off the record. So
Yeah.
but I just want to say, man, I'm greatly encouraged by everyone who's gone thus far. Like, I'm glad that I'm here with you guys, and I'm glad to see how you guys are developing, especially being with Abram and Andrew last semester. It's encouraging. But yes, without further ado,
Somebody do time for me?
I got it, thank you.
yes.
We'll
Well,
stop
again,
at 33.
What's that?
33.
33 is
Alright, sounds good. Alright, here we go. Let's open the word of prayer first. Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you so much just for your goodness and for who you are, and just showing your grace and your love and your mercy. And just to give us the very breath that we have. And Lord, just for giving us the ability, Lord, to be able to read and study your word and to also proclaim it. And God, I pray that you would just be with us, Lord. Would you just speak through me? And Father, I just pray that your Holy Spirit will work in the midst of this, Lord. And I just pray that your truth will be proclaimed and that your people will just learn more about you, learn how to love one another. So God, we just thank you so much. Pray that the voice of truth will be heard today through this sermon as well. So God, we thank you again. Thank you for loving us. Pray that we'll just learn how to love you more and more. Pray all this in your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
So this past winter, I got to go on an amazing trip to Israel with a few other folks in here, Abram and Dr. Isaac, and man, I had such a great time, and it was such a blessing. But man, when we were about to go in our class for Camp 383, we had to prepare, and we had to prepare spiritually, physically, just fine-tuning with God, setting our hearts right and setting our heads right. And at the same time, like I said, physically, we had to prepare our clothes, we had to prepare shampoo, and just personal things that we needed to survive technology. No, I kid. But one of the things that I didn't think about was relationally preparing myself to go there and to also leave here to go there. And I say that because it was with my mom. And that was one of the biggest challenges. I remember when I told her that I was going, and she was so worried, and she got so anxious, and she started going to like YouTube and looking up Mo news broadcasters and talking about how in Egypt there's just so many conflicts, and how in Israel there's just so many things, so much tension. She even found articles on like how dangerous it is, and she was really persuading and trying to convince me not to go. But I praise God that He allowed me to go. and I share that because in the moment I didn't really think about it, but as I came back and just kind of pondered, like, man, what made my mom so worried and so stressed and so anxious? And of course I understand, like, yes, there's that parental love, like, I'm the baby in the family, so of course she's going to love me. And I'm traveling 1,000 and more miles to go to a country that I can't even speak their tongue. And so of course, like, you would think naturally that, yeah, your parents would be worried. And yeah, I understand my mom was worried, but then I kept on thinking, what if there were two things that influenced the way how she felt and the way how she thought? And kind of thought of like this, what caused my mom to be so worried, to be so anxious, to be so stressed? And it's this. I believe that with every one of us too, we struggle with this. And the voice of the enemy is what we hear. And the voice of the self is what we hear. And I say there are three. And there are three. But I want us to take a look, if you guys would turn with me to Nehemiah 6, about how there are these three voices that he hears, or that we can see that he hears throughout his journey of rebuilding the walls. Now I want you guys to stay there as I just kind of give you guys some background information and try to catch us up with what's going on in this story. And it's a pretty well-known story, I would say, but it starts in 586 BC, or really a little bit after that. But King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had just overtaken Jerusalem, and he has just burned and crushed and destroyed the walls. And then later on we see that the king of Persia, King Xerxes, comes and he overcomes the Babylonians. And he gives his throne to his son, King Artaxerxes. I believe that's how you say his name. But yeah, and at this time, Ezra, the prophet, had just came and lived with the people there in Jerusalem. And they tried to rebuild the wall already, but they failed. And so you have Nehemiah here, and he's the governor of Judah, the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes, the new king of Persia. And his heart is just torn. Man, he's just so saddened by the fact that there's these remnants of the people of Israel who were in exile. And they're in this city with no walls, powerless and defenseless from the surrounding enemies. And so he prays to God. I'm just going to run through with you guys what happens from chapter 1 leading us up to chapter 6. But again, there are 3 things that I want you guys to keep in mind. 3 voices. The voice of the enemy, the voice of the self, and I'll get to the last voice. Yeah, but again, Nehemiah, his heart is just tugging, and he prays to God, like, God, if you allow me, I know that we are sinners, but God, you say in your words that if we turn back to you, you will find favor in us. And so he's just praying to God, God, I want to go back and rebuild your wall for your people. So in chapter 2, we see that he pleads with King Artaxerxes. And one day he takes his cup, he's the cupbearer, so he pours wine into the cup, and he goes to the king, and the king says, why is it that you're not smiling today? Because in their culture, no matter what, you had to keep your personal things with yourself and act as if everything was okay before the king. And so, but that day he realized that there was something wrong with Nehemiah. So he asked him, what's wrong? Are you okay? And Nehemiah just kind of shares this heart, like, my heart is uneasy for the city of my ancestors, which is Jerusalem. They live in a place with no walls, and it concerns me and disheartens me, and I'm sad because I want to love on them. And so he pleads with the king, and as he's pleading with the king, he prays to God real quick, and then God softens his heart. And the king allows him to go back to Jerusalem. He writes him a letter, giving him authorization to go before all the other kings and have proof that, hey, King Artaxerxes allowed me to come back to Jerusalem to build these walls. But as he's doing that, there are 2 governors that King Artaxerxes sends with them. Well, technically 3. Sanballat of Samaria, Tobiah of Transjordan, and the third is Gishma, something like that. Sorry, I cannot pronounce his name. But yeah, and so these 3, again, at this time, governors of any land, they want more power. They're very selfish, and they're ambitious for more power. And so I'm going in, like, Nehemiah already kind of knew, like, he just had an ill feeling of these folks, like their intentions behind them. But Nehemiah, he continues. He doesn't share to them what he's specifically doing. He knows his intentions, and he goes and inspects the walls of Jerusalem, and he comes back and he gathers the people. Like, hey, and you see the trouble we are in Jerusalem. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the walls. And so they gathered, and when they gathered, this is what Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem says in chapter 3 of verse 19. And again, you guys don't turn there. Just stay where you're at in Nehemiah 6. Just trying to catch us up to where we're going to. But then again, this is where my first point really takes in. The first voice that we really see come into play in the story of Nehemiah. And it's the voice of the enemy. And it's already working right now. And Nehemiah hasn't even built a temple yet. He's just talking about it. And this is what they say. But when Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite, official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it, they mocked and ridiculed us. What is this you are doing, they asked. Are you rebelling against the king? And again, the first opposition had already began. The voice of the enemy has already started oppressing and being in opposition to what Nehemiah is trying to do for God and his people. And we go along in chapter 3 again. Nehemiah, even with what has been spoken from the other governors, he continues on and he takes the priests and the high priest and the residents around Jerusalem and he divides them. Hey, you rebuild this gate, and there are so many gates. It's crazy. There's like 12 or so plus, and we've been to a few of them, and it's just crazy to imagine and think about how much work they put in. But yeah. Nehemiah and the high priest, and along with the other priests, they divide each gate to a certain amount or a certain tribe or people. And Um, throughout chapter 3, that's all they did. That's all they did was just stating who rebuilt which gate. But in chapter 4, again, the opposition intensifies. It intensifies so much that in chapter 4, verse 1, he says this, when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria. Sacrifices, will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are? Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, what are they building? Even the frogs climbing on it would break down the walls of stones. And as you can see by the language, what they're saying is, man, they're just trying to discourage the Jews and the people who are rebuilding the walls. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, you guys can't do it. And again, we just see more and more of this opposition, more and more of the voices of the enemy. In verse 8 of chapter 4, it says, they all plotted to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. But we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet the threat. Again, now just the talk has become irrelevant to the people. They can withstand that now, but now, man, the three governors are saying, hey, let's get together and let's put this physical oppression on the people. Let's threaten them that we're going to go to war with them. And so the people are just so scared. It says in verse 10 of chapter 4, meanwhile, the people in Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out, and there's so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall. Also, our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them, and we will kill them and put an end to the work. Then the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. And again, I think this is so relevant to us in ministry and in our lives. I think a lot of times, man, we hear these voices just attacking us from all sides. And wherever we turn, it seems like there's just these voices attacking us. Whether that's from our past, or whether that's a mistake that we've just done in the past week, or whether that's the words that we've spoken to others that has scarred them for life. I think a lot of times that comes back to haunt us, and we allow these voices, the voices of the enemy, the voices of the tempter, to really speak into our lives, and we hold on to these lies as our new truths. And I think when we do that, we will see that we become our own enemy. However, when we find ourselves not faced by this, again, we can see that in Nehemiah, that the enemy will no longer just oppress us through his words, but also physically. Because again, as we go on in chapter 5, we see that the people who are building the wall, they go to Nehemiah and they're like, Nehemiah, like, our own people, the Jews are taxing us for, and we're losing our vineyards and our fields of grain and our houses. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to support the people who are building the walls? Like, what are we going to do? And thankfully they were strong enough to withstand the voices of the enemy. But not everyone is strong enough. And for myself, I've listened to the voice of the enemy before. On the lies that he has told me that I'm unworthy, that Andrew, you're a sinner, that you are so imperfect, that Dr. Isaac, you have so many flaws, that Abram, you're just tall. Or Jacqueline, you're a woman, and people don't look up to women as a figure on the pulpit. These are lies that I believe that the tempter tells us. And for myself, again, I've made those lies become my own truth. And when that has happened, I have become my own enemy. And this is the second voice that we hear. The voice of ourself. And I know in psychology, we talk about that self-fulfilling prophecy. When you really tell yourself something that it's going to happen, that somehow it turns out to be that way because we've molded our mentality and our actions to allow that to happen and carry out. There's this psychologist, Robert Melton, and he says it like this: a false definition of the situation evoking a new behavior, which makes the originally false conception come true. And when I just think back to my mom, I think that was what she might have done. And I'm not saying that she did, but I think to an extent that was what she was thinking, like, oh, what if this happens to my son? Oh, what if someone does just come out from the streets and shoot him when he's at Israel? Or what if these tensions from Egypt are really brought into Israel? What would happen? And again, very much for ourselves, I think we do that a lot. Like even prepare for this message. Like, oh, what if my fear of thinking that I will mess up the word or not say what it's saying, which at times I'm more than sure that I had or will. I think a lot of times we allow that fear to enslave us and allow us to be in the state of paralysis where we don't want to take action because we're just so much more fearful of our own thoughts in our heads rather than acting in boldness. We see that Sanballat, he was having a self-talk with himself as well. And again, this is where we go to Nehemiah 6. And I just want to read to us, where do we see the self-talk that Nehemiah has? When word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem, and the Aram, and the rest of our enemies, that I had rebuilt the wall, and not a gap was left in it, though up to that time I had not set the doors and the gates. Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message: "Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono." But they were scheming to harm me, so I sent messengers to them with this reply: "I'm carrying on a great project, and can I go down? Why should the work stop while I leave and go down to you?" 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave them the same answer. Then the 5th time, Sanballat sent his aide to me with the same message, and in his hand was an unsealed letter in which was written. So an unsealed letter was a way of saying, like, okay, this is something that has been authorized. It's something that is just not informally written, but it's a letter that has authority with it. And so that's why in verse 5, Nehemiah made that clarification, because before it was just like an open letter, like an informal letter, like, hey, let's just meet up. We want to talk. But Nehemiah knew the intentions behind these 3 governors. Again, because he is a prophet, so it's kind of not fair. But he knew that, man, they were planning something evil to harm him. But this letter, it was a way of him saying, like, this isn't just us writing, this is something that is authorized. And so here's what the letter says: "It is reported among the nations," and Geshem says it is true, "that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and therefore you are building the wall. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become their king, and have been appointed, and have even appointed prophets to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem. There is a king in Judah. Now this report will get back to the king, so come, let us meet together." So this letter was pretty much just a blackmail to saying to Nehemiah, like, if you don't come here right now, this letter is going to the king. But then again, Nehemiah already had the authorization from the king to come and build the walls. And so Nehemiah says, "I sent him this reply: nothing like what you are saying is happening. You are just making it up out of your head." And that's a verse I kind of want us to focus on as our focal point. Nothing like what you are saying is happening. You are just making it out of your head. And I know that Nehemiah is saying this to Sanballat. But I think a lot of times, and this might be a stretch, but we do this. I feel like he's also speaking this to us. So a lot of these thoughts that we have in our head, I'm thinking that we're just not good enough, that we're insufficient, that we're incapable of doing what God has called us to do, especially as future ministers or future leadership in ministry. I think there are a lot of things even now that we are our enemies. But if there's one truth, I want us to hear this as well. Nothing like what you are saying is happening. You're just making it up out of your head. And I will say that is true for a lot of us. The things that we're just thinking. It's not true. It's just only happening in here. I remember my first time confessing to a girl. Sorry, it's a little personal, but I just remember just confessing to her, just think like, oh man, I'm short. She's not gonna like me. And it was just terrible, and again, just this self-talk of again, things that I just entitle myself to that makes me seem like I'm insufficient and incapable of being liked, of being accepted. But when I did, hey, things turned out well. Small things like that. It's a funny story, but I think even in those moments, we tend to do that. And that is when we have taken the voices of the enemies and we truly accepted his lies as our truth, our enemy becomes ourselves. And then that voice of ourselves becomes our enemy. And I continue to read in Nehemiah, in verse 9. They were all trying to frighten us, thinking their hands would get too weak for the work and it would not be completed. And again, that letter that Sanballat sent to Nehemiah, again, it was just a blackmail in a way of just discouraging the people. And I think, man, how did Nehemiah keep the people so well rooted to not listen to the voices of the enemies and to not listen to the voice of the self? Whether that was them being oppressed by the voice or physically being oppressed. How did Nehemiah keep the people so well rounded, so well rooted into accomplishing the building of the wall? And this is what brings me to the third voice. And I purposely left this one out because we don't directly see it throughout Nehemiah's story. And again, I want us to you can just stay where you're at, but I just want us to kind of think, man, who is this voice, this third voice? And I call this the voice of truth. The voice of truth. And I say that because, again, we don't see the voice of truth. And what I mean by that is God speaking to Nehemiah. We don't see it directly being recorded in Nehemiah's book. But think about this. The king said to me, this is in chapter 2, verse 4, "What is it you want?" This is Nehemiah speaking. "Then I prayed to God of heaven." And then in verse 5 it says, "And I answered the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city of Judah, where my ancestors are buried, so that I can rebuild it." And in that small instant, I believe that God was speaking to him. In that small instant, the voice of truth was spoken to Nehemiah. And again, we can just see this throughout the book, leading up to verse 6 and even beyond that. In chapter 4, verse 4 to 5, after the three governors had just mocked them, what are they building? Even a fox climbing on it would break down the walls. Even the crumbling and the burnt rubble. What are they going to do with that? How are they going to build the walls? And Nehemiah prays, "Hear us, our God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in the land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders." And again in verse 5, chapter 19. And again, I'm just want you guys to see how, man, the voice of truth was speaking in the midst of these moments. Verse 5, chapter 19, Nehemiah says, "Remember me with favor, my God, for all I have done for these people." In chapter 6, verse 9, it says, "But I pray, now strengthen my hands." In chapter 6, verse 12, Nehemiah says, "I realized that God had not sent me, but that he had prophesied." He's talking about the prophecies. "I realized that God had not sent him, but that he had prophesied against me, because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired me." And you see these moments, these small moments of just these prayers, of these praises. And there's an interaction between him and God. The voice of truth just being spoken. That gave him this peace that he was able to just really pour out to the people, to the Jews, that they may stay well rooted. When it came to physical oppression, these were real things that they were facing with. Again, it's just not the voices of the enemies anymore, but it's physical oppression. What did Nehemiah do? He came up with a strategy, of course, and he equipped each man. He divided all his men in half. Half of them building the walls and half of them acting as guards. And he equipped each of them with swords and spears and shields. And everywhere they went, they had that right beside of them. But then what I'm trying to emphasize is, man, like God answered him. Like, this voice of truth was being heard. And this is how he found his peace. And this is how he came up with these strategies to keep the people well around it. You know, when the people was complaining to Nehemiah, like, our own people are taxing us. Like, what are you going to do? We have no more vineyard. We have no more fields of wheat or grain. We don't have houses anymore. Like, they're slowly being taken away. What are we going to do? And Nehemiah, he goes up and, man, he just boldly tells them, like, man, you're going to tax your own people. And he convicts them in a way where the people that were taxing him gives back everything, or 1% of it. You know, and they're able to continue doing what they're doing. And we read that they complete building the wall. In verse 16, when all our enemies heard about this, all the surrounding nations were afraid and lost their self-confidence because they realized that this work had been done with the help of our God. And it's amazing. So like throughout the book, God didn't even say a single word. Okay, he might have, but we don't see it when we read it. But even the enemies know that the hand of God was helping the people rebuild the wall. And I just think that that speaks so much volume. That the voice of truth can speak in the midst of those moments. So this is what I want to say to you. Brothers and sisters, when we have enslaved ourselves to the lies of the enemy, to the lies of the tempter, and we believe in his lies as our truth, and we become our own enemies, the voice of ourself. I want us to remember something, that God's voice is still speaking in the midst of that, and in the voice of truth. And what brings me so much joy when I think about that is this. Our greatest adversary, death and sin, cannot hold our Savior. And when we look to the empty tomb, we see and we know that our Christ has risen. And this sanctifier, that he has set us free. And I believe in that man, the voices of our enemies and the voices of ourselves, like, man, that can't hold us. Because when we look at the grave, we see an empty tomb. And I want us to listen and to ingrain that voice of truth into our hearts, into our head. Like, man, Jesus, you, then man, we can overcome our lives through you, through what you have done and what your word says. And you know what his word says? He calls us sons and daughters. He calls us children of God. He calls us more than conquerors. He declares us righteous before the Father. And when he looks at us, he doesn't see our sin. He sees who we are in Christ. Man, that's righteous. And all these lies that we hear from the enemy and all these lies that we tell to ourselves. To me, when I was at Israel, I felt like all chains just let loose. When I got to truly embrace that joy that I have and that peace I have at the empty tomb when we were at the garden tomb. So much peace and so much joy, like, man, I couldn't defeat my own voice. I couldn't defeat the voices of the enemies, but when we look at the empty tomb, we know someone who did. And that was Christ. And so the lies of fear, the lies of discouragement and insecurity and condemnation that we hear from our enemies and ourselves. My challenge to us is that when we hear these voices, and that when we hear the voices of ourselves, we look to the empty tomb, and we see that there's a risen King. And we see that there's the sanctifier who's helping us heal from these wounds, who is wanting to set us free from the prison that we built with our words from the enemies and the words of the self. Because he is triumphant overall. I want to read us one verse that I think just really hits home. In 1 Corinthians 15, chapter 15, verse 55 to 57. And it reads, "Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God. He gives us a victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. And that's a verse I want us to keep in mind when we hear these voices. That we listen to the voice of truth above all. And as we live, I encourage us, again, to hold that dear to our heart, to hold that dear to our head, that we may stay rooted in the Word of God and in the voice of truth. That when we are oppressed, no matter where we turn, when we're oppressed with these voices, I pray that we can hold on to something objective, something that has authority over all, and that is the voice of truth. And so, let us pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, we just come before you so humble, that when we hear these voices of the enemies and we hear the voices of the self, and we imprison ourselves with these lies and these titles that keeps us in fear and keeps us in stress and brings us anxiety. God, I just pray that your word has been spoken and that your truth has been heard. When we look to the empty tomb, Father, that it's an empty tomb. That these lies that we hear, Father, that you have already set us free. And that death has no sting on you, and that through you, we share that. That you call us your children, that you call us your sons and daughters, that you call us righteousness, that you declare us as a friend, and that we can call you as a friend and a father. And so God, we just thank you so much for your word, and I pray that each of us will just be encouraged, and that we will grow root in your truth and what you prepared for us. And that when we hear these voices, that we will stay rooted and not be swayed. Lord, I just thank you so much for this time and for these fellow brothers and sisters. I pray that you would just continue to be with us throughout our day, that we may just live to glorify you and you alone. So God, we just thank you so much for loving us, for showing your grace and your mercy. And we're proud to see your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Good job, Tou.
Time,
30 minutes.
30, you good? Comments, feedback for Tou?
Nailed the timing.
Yes.
That's a huge change from last semester. That's impressive. I really like the sermon. That was one for me today, so thank you. The voice of truth is really powerful, like the wording that you chose there. Because when you started off saying the voice of the enemy, the voice of self, like I went ahead and wrote down number 3, the voice of God, because I was like, that's where he's going to get it. But voice of truth is so much stronger than just voice of God. So that was really good. The illustration of talking to a girl, like I think that was really good, and you could have like expounded on that a little bit more. Obviously, like your timing was pretty tight, so I don't know where you could have fit that more in, but that like makes it a little bit more personal and helps me to apply it to like, oh yeah, that's what that's like, or there's voices in my own head.
Right.
I really like that, but I think it could have been a little bit longer.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks,
good job.
What Andrew was trying to say that he just wanted to know the end of the story.
Yeah.
So where's the girl? You did a really good job. Definitely the sermon was, like Andrew said, very J.K. And it was just kind of more personal to me and stuff. You sharing it, you had a really good, strong voice, strong eye contact. You kind of favored the left a little bit. But other than that, you did exceptionally well. It was really, really good. I mean, I've never heard you preach before, but it's really good.
Man, that was just like, man, that was so dope. And you had such a great, and you had such a like slow, like nice pace, I felt like, compared to like just the past, like last semester and even this semester. I think that was like a really good example of like keeping a steady, chill pace no matter what you were talking about. And there were times that you sped up and it was really good. But then most of the time you were just like enjoying it and like got the Mr. Rogers like sweater, like so laid back. It's just like, man, like that's like, it's so great. And it just made it so, it just made it really warm. And then I like that how you threw in the three voices thing, because you only named off two, but then you're like, nah, there's three, but like I'll come back to it. Like I thought that was good, because then I kept on trying to look around, like, was it the voice of God? Because I guess I'm not like as righteous as Andrew. Well, where it's like, where's he going? Because it could be something else. You know, I don't see. It's like you. It's like I don't see directly like God speaking in the passage. So, but then when you brought that up and made the connection, it was like, boom, yeah, the voice of truth, and you brought it all the way back to his prayer, and then yeah, I just thought that was awesome, and it made me think about. It was good because it brought back so many memories of like times in my life where people have criticized me or spoken down on me, and like how I've like beat myself down. But then like the ending was so good, and you like clearly presented the resurrection so clearly at the end, and that was like the strongest thing for me. Like the gospel focus was so clear, and it just like felt like it was really smooth, just from all the like the voices thing. And then just like smooth into the gospel, like Jesus is the truth.
Case and interest, April's cough.
Is that
The highlight.
You do a good job too. Your voice and your emotiveness is really strong. So well done in both of those. Some fillers, some likes, especially early on, where you were, you need to wordsmith your pronouns around a little bit. So you were talking about Artaxerxes and Nehemiah, and then you said him and he, and then it's like, okay, which one, you know? So just being aware of, okay, the pronouns are going to confuse people. I need to actually use the name here, even though in a normal conversation I probably wouldn't do that. Does that make sense? I also love the three voices. I also wrote down God, because that's where I thought you were going with it. So, and I agree, voice of truth is even stronger. I would encourage you to drill down into that on this passage more, because all three of them are there in the passage. I felt as though there was a lot of context given.
Right.
So I think you could probably expand out more on those different voices that we hear and the application of it, and less on so much of the other stuff that's going on in Nehemiah. I think, you know, if it was a sermon series, then you're bringing all that in, but to try and get all of Nehemiah into one sermon is probably a bit too much context at that point.
Okay.
On that note too, I think it was when you started talking about the voice of truth stuff, or it could have been the voice of self. I think it was the voice of truth when you said this might be a little bit of a stretch, and I didn't feel like it was a stretch. So I thought it was good. So that, to me, like whenever I hear somebody say that, I'm just like automatically get skeptical. I'm like, okay, what are they about to try to tie in? But really, it was a good point. So I would just be careful about that too. And then for you, because I had the same problem that he did, and Abram too, of like we've got this whole, especially when you're working in the Old Testament,
Right.
like how are you supposed to do that?
Well, like for this one, probably what I would do is instead of going through, and there's different ways to do it, so this is just how I would probably approach it, is stay in chapter 6, but then as you talk about the voice of the enemy, bring that out from chapter 6 and say, you know, this isn't the first time Nehemiah's had this problem. He's heard the voice of the enemy here. He's heard the voice of the enemy here. He's heard, and you're not doing it chronologically necessarily, or even necessarily going back into the passages, but you're referencing back, you know. So you can say, if you read through the whole book of Nehemiah, you'll see that chapter 6 is just a microcosm of everything that's happening in this book. And so then we have, you know, the voice of self, and you know, Nehemiah here is battling that, but he's battling it because the other Israelites they've been listening to what St. Ballard has been saying. They're getting worried about it, and they're, you know, so you can, that's how I think I would approach it, as opposed to trying to lay out this whole big chronological timeline. I think it just becomes too much for most people who aren't familiar with Nehemiah. So pull it from 6, and then pull all these different examples throughout the rest of the book.
Okay.
I think is probably how I would do it.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
that's not the right way or the only way, but I think it minimizes that burden of so much material there. So it's good material. Like it wasn't, none of the material that you provided was unnecessary. It just took so long to get to the voices of truth that by the time I got there, I'm forgetting the stuff that you've already said.
Right,
Does that
right.
make sense?
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
well done, too. Good job.
Thank you.